How is it going, YouTube? Malagant here. We are going to be talking if one mastery is viable in Grim Dawn, and this video is going to be more targeting towards the people that are um newer to Grim Dawn, I should say, that are just jumping in. The stuff that I'm going to be saying, if you're like an old player of Grim Dawn, if you've been playing for a while, the stuff that I will say, they will most likely sound common sense to you, and at the same time, it might be nothing all too surprising. But thanks for joining. Please remember to leave a like to the video, and let's talk about if one mastery is viable. So the quick answer is not necessarily. So the answer is no, simply because you don't necessarily lose anything at all for picking a second mastery. That being said, it would be okay to finish the game with one mastery as well, especially the normal difficulty, for sure. So personally, when I'm leveling a character, I do go with like one mastery for a really long time. There's a couple of stuff that I follow when it comes to the rules, for instance, for the leveling. Personally, what I enjoy doing is I level up with like an AoE ability most of the time. Just to give an example, let's pick Inquisitor. I would probably level up with Word of Pain over the box, simply because Word of Pain is AoE. And what I would follow is like, I would probably max it out because it's going to be my main ability, so to speak. And then afterwards, I'll try to see if I want anything else from the Inquisitor. If I do, in this case, I would probably want Aura of Censure. This is too technical at this point, but I would go for it. So at that point, though, after getting the Aura of Censure, it is the time that I would shift into a secondary mastery, most likely. To get maybe some sort of like a mobility, maybe some, beefiness to the character, a little bit of like defenses. And this is going to be changing for another mastery. I do believe that, like, you think that, okay, for Inquisitor you would do that, but what about the others? I don't necessarily want this video to be something like hand holding and telling you, okay, you do this on Inquisitor, select your secondary mastery after Censure. That wasn't necessarily my point. What I was trying to say is that, like, for my playthrough, I would try to get an AoE spell, and afterwards, when I feel like I'm comfortable with my first mastery, I would try to pick the second one, and I would like you to be on that page as well, so to speak. So to try to give an example from like Soldier, let's say, is one of the more picked up ones as a new player. I would most likely play with Force Wave. It's okay to play with Cadence as well, especially as a new player. No worries at all on that one, because at the end of the day, this game is meant to be played at your own speed. When it comes to cadence leveling, it's going to be a little bit more single targetish, so you'll be a little bit slower with your progression. But in return, maybe you're going to be enjoying playing a sword and board, and at the same time really strong, tanky character that can stand its ground, and at the same time really strong against like maybe single targets, and cadence can bring that to the table. So if you enjoy that, by all means, please play that. That's when Grim Dawn is beautiful. It's good at your own speed, definitely. So you decide the speed. But when do you swap to a secondary mastery? Well, if your cadence was bread and butter, I would probably max this out. If Force Wave is my bread and butter, then I would max this one out. And then I would probably, support it again with one of the exclusive auras at the end. And then afterwards, if I have like a mobility, it doesn't necessarily need to be maxed out. I would probably try to select some sort of like a utility secondary mastery at that point. So at the end of the day, it's around like level 40, maybe level 50-ish is when I take the second mastery, it looks like. Let's try to give one more example. Let's say Nightblade, and you're playing it kind of like a Pierce Cold kind of a combination. Then you have your mobility, you have your heal, you have your AoE over here, maybe a little bit of single target there. This time I don't necessarily need to rush for the Blade Spirits, it doesn't necessarily have its exclusive, and I'm dealing Pierce and Cold. So I might actually try to pick up a secondary mastery on the Knight's Blade a little bit earlier, simply because I don't really need to fill out the entire mastery bar for something that's extremely big, so to speak, unless I want to check out the Blade Spirit so much. So that out of the way, I will try to give some hints, and I'll talk about how to pick the second mastery, because I think most of the people that are jumping into Grim Dawn and asking if one mastery is viable, or you don't necessarily want to pick the second one, I think those people are the ones that are actually having a hard time deciding, and they don't necessarily want to commit into a secondary choice and make something that they would regret later on. One thing out of the way, almost like literally, actually, not even almost, every single class combination is viable in the late game as well. The game is extremely good balance in that case. Obviously, some of them are doing some stuff better than the others, as you might imagine. So one of them is more sustainable, while the other one is more AoE, while the other one can actually lifesteal and stuff like that. There are lots of things like this. What you could do wrong, however, is that like perhaps you could you would be playing some sort of like a physical damage, and you might pick up something that's not necessarily supporting physical damage all that much. So there could have been like perhaps a better option for physical damage in mind. But no matter what you pick as secondary mastery, I want you to understand there will be something to gain, nothing to lose, except, you know, if you would regret your choice and would like to play something else later on. How to make your secondary mastery easier to pick is the next question to ask here. I would like you to keep it extremely simple for yourself. So no matter what you're playing so far, ask yourself what you have been playing, you know, what's your play style in that case with that character. So in that case, the last example was Knight Blade. It was like a Pierce and Cold. When you look at this list over here, there are not so many masteries in here that are capable of supporting both Pierce and Cold, or maybe even just one. You know, you could definitely come up with two big names, which is Arcanist and Inquisitor. They're both extremely good at Cold and Pierce. Arcanist not so much on the Pierce side, but it could still bring incredible utility. And Spellbreaker is a good pick, but at the same time, so is Infiltrator. So in that case, probably Inquisitor is the better pick from the example that I have given, if you keep it extremely simple. You know, if you were playing an Ice Blade, this is like more physical damage, then it's probably a Soldier or an Oathkeeper are the good picks here, because they kind of support you well with physical. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Arcanist is a bad pick, or even an Occultist for that matter, because it would still bring you something. In this case, it's minus physical resistance, and a good on-use Blood of Krieg, which is like a, you know, both buff defensively, little bit of offensively also, which is offensive ability, really nice. But in the overall picture, it wouldn't be supporting the entire character as well as something else would be. So try to keep it simple for yourself. Are you like fire damage? See what other masteries are supporting you with the fire damage. Then your choices are going to be, instead of 7 masteries, it's going to be, actually I should have said 8 masteries. It's going to be maybe 1 or 2. And then you can maybe make the choice from like which one is tankier, or maybe which one's bringing utility, which one's more your playstyle. It's going to be much easier for you. This entire concept can be also said for devotions. This is going to be like my bonus input, basically. What I mean by that is when you look at the devotions coming from Ouch, you know, it's like a new player to this game. You could say that, okay, this is overwhelming, you know, it's just too much. Intimidating, perhaps. But maybe not, because the stuff that you need, let's say your cold damage, you write on the search bar cold, and then you see like there's only one thing that's supporting you on the tier 1. So why don't you start with this one? For instance, you can always respec later on. Where do you want to go next? Let's find some like good cold damage stuff. Like we have the Blizzard over here. Oh, big AoE, right? It's called Amatok, which is the Blizzard proc. And it's shining because I wrote cold damage over here. So perhaps I would like to build up to the Blizzard, but then again, I'm feeling like my character doesn't necessarily need all that much AoE, so perhaps let's find that it's a bit more single targets. While there's the minus resistance over here, it should open up the targets. So let's build up to this. You know, if you keep it extremely simple like this, at the end of the day, also when you play Grim Dawn, there could be other ARPG titles set to this as well. Even though the map or the bigger picture looks incredibly intimidating and so big, when you start optimizing things, you realize there are not so many things that you could do differently. So there are like a couple of devotions, in this case constellations, that you kind of must pick anyway. So try to keep it extremely simple instead of like going through every single one of the points and try to, you know, value them in response to each other. That's not gonna work that way. So basically, as a Knight Blade, you might want attack speed, perhaps write attack speed over here, or total speed. That's another great stat for basically melee players in this game. It's insane. So that's going to be it from me. I really hope the video was useful. Thanks for watching. Leave a like and I'll catch you next time. Peace out, YouTube.